to the Confident Healer podcast. I'm Sharmila Molly. I'm a self-love expert, an intuitive healer, and also your hostess for this podcast. You are about to hear inspirational, uplifting, and soulful conversations about the ins and outs of having confidence, maintaining self-love, and sanity as we answer the calling of being a healer and running a business. I would really appreciate it if you could help me grow this podcast by telling others about it and by becoming a patron by donating monthly or giving a generous one-time donation. When you donate, it lets me know that you love what I'm doing, and by donating, you are supporting me, a healer running a small business. You can find the PayPal link on theconfidenthealer.net and in every show note. So thank you so much for being here, and let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Confident Healer podcast. I am your hostess, Sharmila Molly, and this week we're going to talk about Reiki, energy healing. I've been doing Reiki. I've been practicing Reiki for 19 years. I did my first Reiki class. I took my first Reiki class back in January of 2003. And I never saw myself, doing this for a living. It was just something for my own personal healing. And that's how it always starts, right? It starts with your own personal healing, and as you move along, it just sort of awakens something in you, and then boom, next thing you know, you're starting to take more Reiki classes, become a Reiki master teacher, and boom, bada bing, bada boom, here I am. So, what is Reiki? What is energy healing? When I've been talking about energy, if you're new to this podcast, I've talked to many different types of healers, and a lot of them do some sort of energy healing. So Reiki is a Japanese type of healing. You can do it hands-on, or you can do it remotely, meaning I'm sitting in this room and you're sitting in another room in another state, another side of the world, and I can still work with your energy, because energy doesn't have to have a physical location or a time location, meaning you don't have to, you can send energy to the future, you can send it to the past, and of course, obviously, you can send it to the present. So Reiki is two Japanese kanjis. Rei meaning spirit, spiritual. I've seen it written as ghost. And ki meaning energy. And loosely translated, Reiki, if you asked any Reiki practitioner, they would say it's universal life force energy is what that means. So whenever we're saying Reiki, we are saying universal life force energy. But translated directly, it's spirit, spiritual energy. And so what does that mean? We are all energy beings. I've said that. If you've listened to this podcast, you've heard many practitioners that I've had on here, and there are various forms of energy healing that they do. They've talked about that. So let's dive a little deeper into it, shall we? So energy is something, when you think about, when you use the phrase, gosh, I just don't have any energy for that today. Like, what do you mean by that? Think about that. What do you mean when you say, I don't have any energy today? Or, oh my God, I have so much energy. I drank some coffee and I've just go, go, go. What is that? What do you mean by that? And how does that apply to healing? It's always been difficult for me to describe what I do, because it's something to be experienced. If you look up a definition of Reiki online or in a book, it will describe, it will tell you about the Japanese kanji, and also that it is a stress-reducing, stress-alleviating treatment that you can do hands-on or remotely being on the other side of the world, or just sitting next to a person, or doing it over the phone, sending it to the past, sending it to the present. You are moving energy along by getting into a meditative space. And for me, that seemed to be an easier way to describe Reiki. Is it's a meditative process because it does put you in a meditative state. I get quiet, I listen very deeply, whether I'm doing it on myself or especially if I'm doing it for a client. And we talk about what their intention is for the session, why they're coming in. Reiki and energy healing work on all levels. It's great for like physical pain, emotional and spiritual pain that it causes, right? And so when you are receiving Reiki or an energy healing, whether it's hands-on or remotely, what it does is the practitioner is channeling, they should be channeling, tapping into their infinite energy or asking their guides to help. And I remember last week I was saying about how to stop absorbing other people's energy is that, when you get into these healing arts, and I know this so well because I started with Reiki and then got into massage, you want to fix the person because that's why they're coming to you. You think like, okay, or most of us will think like, okay, I got to fix this person. And you realize that while you can help alleviate, you're not going to fix their problem if they are coming in and they're really stressed and they've been, putting a lot of tension in their shoulder and it's just a chronic thing. That's a lifestyle change that they're going to need to implement, and not just coming in to get treatments, either whether it be massage or Reiki or any type of energy healing. You can alleviate and give them a sense of relief, and that might last a day or a month, or just depending on that person and how they live their life. And so when you get into this mindset of you want to fix someone, then you start to use your own energy, which is finite. And then you start to feel completely drained because you just gave them all of it. And you just feel like wiped out. And I think a lot of us have felt that way, whether it's working or working at home, whether you're child rearing, there's a point of exhaustion. There's physical exhaustion that parents have, especially when they're new parents and with small children, right? Because they require a lot of attention, a lot of your energy, right? There's that word again. And finding time to replenish that can be really challenging because you're not just taking care of a child. There's the household, there's dishes, you got to cook, you got to clean, you got to get the kid cleaned up, put them to bed, and then it's like, maybe you don't get a lot of sleep. So that leads to physical exhaustion, which leads to mental exhaustion, which then causes some type of, emotional pain. You start to feel disconnected from yourself, and that's when people sometimes turn to Reiki or some sort of energy healing and see a practitioner to help replenish, to help clear, to help ground, or whatever it is that they're coming in for. So I hope I didn't go off track, because I tend to do that and it gets tricky when I'm talking about Reiki, but that's how we apply it. And so Reiki can be very meditative. It is for relieving some kind of stress in your life, because when you're under a lot of stress, you tend to get myopic about certain things or hyper focused and can't see the forest for the trees. Like you don't enjoy your life, or you're too caught up on something and other things in your life start to have negative effects, right? You're paying attention to something that's been bothering you, and then everything else around you can't keep up with it, because that thing something that's been bothering you kind of you blow it up in your head, and it's hard to maybe focus on your relationship. You can't show up in the ways that you want to show up. You tend to not have the energy to do that. So I hope that helps helps the trying to define Reiki. And so like listening to this podcast, right? You're listening it because maybe you like my energy. You like the sound of my voice. Maybe the sound of my voice is very relaxing. Put you in a trance. I'm not going to do that. But there's an energy exchange happening on your end, and on my end, yeah, I'm putting a lot of energy into this podcast, into these episodes, by speaking, by talking about something that I feel needs to be talked about, to kind of go behind the scenes a little and explain a little bit more. I mean, I'm talking more about my intention, but hopefully that is translating, and that's why you keep coming back to listen, because there's something about what I'm saying that resonates. There's something about me. It doesn't really matter what I'm talking about. It resonates because we're vibrating on the same level. You know, you're catching my vibe. I don't know if that was ever a term, but do you understand what I mean? And this is what I also wanted to remind people, because I forget. So on my website, theconfidenthealer.net, you can leave a voicemail. And if you leave me a voicemail, like if I'm asking you, do you understand what I'm saying? You can leave me a voicemail like, no, Sharmila, I have no idea what you're saying. And you can, and I can, if you want, I can also put that on incorporate, your comments or questions in the episode. So just wanted to mention that. You can leave me a message of an actual voicemail on theconfidenthealer.net, or you can send me a message by emailing me. Anyway, Reiki, energy healing, it allows you to work in a very different space, kind of outside the box, and you're using your other senses. And if you're receiving, you start to also use different senses. So as your body starts to relax and things kind of come up, like maybe it starts off like, well, I'm going because, I have some shoulder pain and I don't really like massage anymore. So I think Reiki can help me. So if you're getting that regularly, over time, you realize like, wow, every time I come out of that session, I learn something new about myself. I see the world differently. It changes your perspective because, while sometimes you fall asleep on the table, while you're on the table, you might experience different things like visions, right? Or heat sensations, and you open your eyes and the practitioner's at your head, but you're feeling the heat sensation on your knee and your foot, and you're like, wait, how does that work? What's going on? And if I were to visualize what the energy looks like when you're tapping into that infinite source that is your spirit, so that can be within, and some people also call in their divine guide. So if you can imagine, like Archangel Michael, or maybe like Lakshmi, you call in Lakshmi or something, and so you just imagine those beings there and your own infinite energy. And if you were to give that infinite energy like a texture, like imagine it like water or light or a color, and just seeing that color, that beam, coming, emanating, probably most likely from your heart because it's heart centered, or maybe it's from your third eye or your crown. And I'm talking about chakras here. Your crown is above your head, and that energy coming through, and either whether you're sitting there like kind of meditating, not doing hands-on, or doing hands-on, like the energy flowing out of your hands, imagining that light or water flowing into the other person and affecting their energy. That's the energy exchange in a very intimate, non-sexual way. Let's go and recap. So we are all energy beings. We are always interacting energetically, whether we realize it or not. Third of all, some of us are more attuned to it. We've maybe as a kid, you probably shut it down because you realized it was wrong. Somebody told you it was wrong. Hopefully you found your way back and realized like, oh my God, those are my natural gifts. I can use them in many different applications other than healing. And we all have a basic understanding of our energy levels and our interactions with people. And again, I just want to give you like another example of, so you walk into the room and you either want to be there or you're very uncomfortable and you want to leave, right? Why is that? Is it because the energy in the room? Is there someone emanating something in there? Is somebody having some negative intention and you feel it and you don't want to be there? That would be an energetic interaction. And that's where you learn to follow your intuition. Like, yeah, I don't want to be here. I'm just going to leave. Or if you have to be there, say, because it's for work or a family thing, no, you don't have to be there. Are there consequences? Maybe, but then you can handle those consequences, because if what you're walking into is not a full 100% yes, and you're feeling iffy, you're not feeling good, you feel a little drained, that is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about energy. And so some people can be afraid of, like, oh, I don't know what Reiki is. It's very scary sounding. It's so benign, but it's because there's a fear of being hurt by someone, that they're going to implant something and do something that's nefarious to the other person. And while there are some people like that, most of your practitioners in healing are not. They're genuinely wanting to help other people because that's what they've been called to do. So that's why, when you hear about Reiki, it sort of piques people's interest, right? Or you talk about energy healing, it's like, whoa, what's that? And you go and explore, like me, and then you're like, oh my, like I felt like when I first took my Reiki class, I felt like I felt like I had golden hands, like King Midas, like everything I touched turned to gold, but in a good way, not that I ate, like touched my food and I couldn't eat it, right? It wasn't tragic. I couldn't wait to go home and like put my hands on myself, on my stomach or something, and go to sleep. And that's how I would put myself to sleep for like, I don't know how many years, up until a few years ago. First of all, I should say I never had a problem sleeping. I initially got into Reiki because I had heard of it before from someone else. A friend of mine had some guy she was seeing, and he was a Reiki practitioner, so I had heard the word. And one of my best friends had taken a Reiki class, and she told me, she didn't suggest that, oh, you should take this class. She said, you're taking this class. And I just thought, okay. And it just totally changed my life in so many great ways. And how it changes a person's life depends on you, right? It's because it changed my life because it brought into awareness. And like I said, I've been, a student of spiritual healing since I was 14, and had studied meditation, and there were certain things that I understood and there were certain things I didn't understand, and it just took that healing that I was doing to another level where I could just do it myself. I could put my hands on my body, and if I felt like I had a headache, or just to soothe myself, I would just put my hands on my stomach like I have it on my stomach right now. You can't see me, but I'm on video. Eventually I'll put this on YouTube, but I'm going to stand up. See? I'm not tall enough to show below my belly button, but I have it on my lower abdomen and where my stomach organ is. And I would do that. Gosh, I would wake up a little bit early and then try to give myself a full Reiki session, which was impossible to do because I fell asleep and I'd just be at my head. And like an hour later, I was like, shit, I better go to work. It changes you because you, like I said, you become aware of certain things in your body. It awakens some of your spiritual gifts, your third eye, opens your heart up a little bit more. than maybe what you were used to. It's also very validating of certain maybe things in your life that you thought it validates things in your life that no one else could validate for you. You know, it's a journey. And what do I mean by validation? That's one benefit of Reiki. You know, like if you, like I said, like most people that I meet, obviously, obviously it's a different type of person. They come to me, and it always ends up that when they were children, they were very psychic. They had ESP, right? Extrasensory perception, and could hear things. They could see ghosts. They could sense different types of energies. They could read people's minds, right? And somewhere along the way, it's scary, right? When you're little and you realize no one else is like that, and you just want to fit in because that's how it is when you're young. Or that somebody tells you, like, that's the devil's work. That is bad. You should not have those powers. Then you watch a horror movie and you see something like that, and you're like, oh yeah, that's very bad. Like, I don't want to end up like that. These people have, they have those abilities that they turned off or shut down. And then they come to me because it's been nudging back. It's amazing. Like, so I started this in 2003, Reiki, right? And over the years, just like how much has come, how much consciousness, of course, evolves, and what gets put out into the mainstream. So now, I can look up intuition, and it's not just a little blurb here and there. It is talked about in major magazines, right? Like I remember a few years ago, like Time did an article about the Tibetan monks who could, they would wear something freezing, and with their breath and meditation, they would heat up their bodies where they would be sweating, and their clothes would be, instead of drenched with, with cold water, it was drenched with sweat, right? So anyway, so what I was saying was that, so I get these people, and that's what I mean by validating, because they either come to a Reiki class, which, by the way, I do have a training coming up starting in May, the Confident Healer 9-month training. And they come to a class, or they come to get a session because they're curious, because it invokes something in them that they remember from maybe a past life, or maybe from something that when they were children. And so that's what I'm talking about, that it can be really validating, because it's like, oh my God, yeah, this is real. These gifts are real. I want to do what you're doing, or I want to do something similar. And so it just kind of reawakens something that's been dormant, or something that or enhances something that's already there. And for me, I was always empathic. Like, I wasn't able to, read someone's mind. And I still don't do that. I don't go out into the world, like, oh, I'm going to read this person's mind. It's only in a session when things like that happen, where you can start to read other people's energy. And so that's a more advanced type of healing, being able to read someone's energy and help them, move through that to change something, because that's what they want. They want to change something in their life because they're not happy with what's going on currently. That is what I do in a nutshell. That's what Reiki or energy healing is, and how Reiki is different. Well, I guess maybe I should give a little bit of a brief background on it. Was that the founder, Mikao Usui, was a Buddhist, and he was a family man, and he had meditated for 21 days on a mountain, and downloaded a healing system, and he called it Reiki. And so it's very different from 100 years ago, how it's taught now. And when it was brought to the West by a Hawaiian woman who was of Japanese descent, she changed some of the things, as it normally does, right? There's, I can be a bit of a purist, and I'm definitely not with Reiki, but when I teach Reiki, I do these attunements that reawaken the energy inside you to heal. What do I mean by reawakening the energy? Because you already have the energy. But now we're just kind of fine tuning it for your own benefit to use it in a different way instead of just talking to people, and have more intent with how you direct your energy and how you direct and tapping into a different source, so that you're not only drawing from your own reservoir, which is finite, but then there's another, I don't want to call it a reservoir, but there's that infinite part of you. And some people pull it from the universe, from God, and pull it down through their crown and out their hands, or however they do it. Or maybe it's out their third eye, which is a lot of visualization, and where the guided visualization comes through, that is coming from like sometimes the heart and the third eye and the crown combined. That's a little bit of a background about Reiki. So the difference between Reiki and say another type of energy healing is that with Reiki there is somebody that is attuning you or initiating you into that infinite energy, showing you a way to access that infinite energy. That's what I want to say. See, I don't know why. It's just so hard for me because my work, even though I'm very grounded, the work that I do is very, can go really esoteric, and I'm trying to keep it grounded. And so I hope that you're understanding and that you're still with me. If not, let me know, and I will do another episode and explain it better. There's a Reiki master, and don't let the master fool you. It's a term that I have never been comfortable with, but that's what it's called, Reiki master teacher. And so usually a Reiki master teacher will give you the initiation, the attunements to show you how to tap into that infinite source. Whereas another type of energy healing, they are teaching you like maybe meridians, using your hands to channel energy in a different way, maybe teaching like visualizations. There's different ways that people teach that. And the way I teach it is I do the attunements and of course the traditional Reiki hand positions, but then I also teach a lot of the stuff that I've picked up from giving Reiki treatments over the years, and things that I have downloaded, techniques that I've learned, nurture people to trust their own intuitive gifts. Like, okay, here's one way to do it, and you can stray from it, of course, and build on it, or scrap it completely if you figure out a different way of doing it. And that usually comes from practice. And so how you become a Reiki practitioner, just like the name says, practitioner, is you practice it. You practice it on yourself. You practice it on other friends. You don't have to charge anything at first if that's not what you want to do. You can do it any way you want to, as long as you're practicing. Practice is key, people, right? As they say, practice makes perfect, but not really perfect, right? Because what is perfection? You're perfectly imperfect. So, but doing it, using Reiki in your everyday life, using energy, that tapping into that universal energy flow in your everyday life. That is what Reiki is, the way I've defined it, my very long definition of many examples, because I think that's the best way to show people, is to try to give specific examples. And of course, by doing, right? By experiencing it. So we'll take a couple minutes. If you're driving, just maybe shut it off now, and I will transmit energy through this episode. So just start with your breath and breathe as you normally do. And visualize roots growing from the earth into your feet and hooking into your tailbone, so that you're nice and grounded. And just keep noticing your breath. You might feel a sensation somewhere in your body, tingling or heat sensation, or maybe it's cooling. Just allow that sweet spiritual ray energy key to flow in your auric field, in your body. Soothing. Maybe your breath has slowed down, you notice. We're going to close this session out. And just on your own, taking 3 deep breaths in and out. And opening your eyes, wiggling your fingers and your toes. Thank you for allowing me to transmit energy through this episode. And I ask that all of our divine guides, Usui, our soul guardians, step away from this brief Reiki session together. Thank you and welcome back. How does that feel? I close my eyes and everything seems much brighter. So thank you for allowing me to do that brief Reiki meditation, that brief energy healing meditation. Maybe that helps you understand a little bit more about what Reiki is. Thank you so much for joining me today. And everything that I mentioned in here will be in the show notes. And please leave me a message at theconfidenthealer.net if you found this helpful, if you have any comments. If you didn't understand it, please let me know. I love hearing from you all. Thank you so much. This is Sharmila Molly, and you're listening to the Confident Healer podcast. See you next week. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. You can find information about the guest or any links I referenced in the show notes. And would you help me grow the show by doing these 2 things? 1, sharing the podcast with someone that you think needs to hear it, and 2, supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and giving monthly or make a one-time generous donation. It helps me grow the show, and I can just focus on making great episodes for you. You can listen, find the show notes, and the PayPal link to donate all in one convenient location, theconfidenthealer.net. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next week.